Well, what is it, Marcus? Did you find it? Report! Diodora was pacing restlessly nearby, calling his attendant for the umpteenth time. No, young master, this one is empty too. A male voice came from the magic formation. Please be patient. There are only a few places left. Even if they also turn out to be empty, the other sides should reveal themselves soon. You had best prepare for that moment. I am returning. My men will check the remaining points. Damn it! What the hell is going on here? Pff. Diodora spat in anger and dispelled the communication magic formation. Watching him, Sona couldn't help but frown. How long was he going to act like this? Apparently, he harbored quite a grudge against those people. The corner of her mouth reflexively twitched upward, looking at the indignant face of the individual beside her, but she immediately suppressed the urge to laugh. She couldn't help but smile, looking at his decoration and panic-mongering. Sona was pleased that someone had finally taught him a lesson, but now was not the time for schadenfreude. It was time to work. If she provoked him too, it certainly wouldn't end well. However, Sona completely agreed that something strange was happening. First, a trace of aura appeared out of nowhere, pointing exactly to the culprit, even though she couldn't detect him before. And this applied to not just this incident. Rias had tried to track them down countless times before, too many to count. Yet each attempt ended in failure. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. But this time, everything was completely different. It looked as though they were being waited for, led, and finally dragged into a net. They had been led by the nose the entire time, and Sona categorically disliked it, especially when they rushed to follow a trail, only for the aura to suddenly vanish and reappear somewhere else later. This repeated not once nor twice, but right up until they were brought here. Well, even while they were being led, Sona had naturally thought through the main scenarios of how events might develop, as well as ways to counter them. It was obvious even then that this was a trap. She prepared for a possible ambush, a direct confrontation, or a fierce chase as a last resort. However, the final destination where the unknown enemy led them completely exceeded all her expectations. After all, right now they were at a magical girl show where the starring role was played by her sister. She definitely hadn't expected this. Sona ceased to understand what kind of idiocy was taking place. They were supposedly led by humans possessing the holy attribute, and moreover, of such power that not all angels and fallen possess. And they led them to a demon lord's concert show? What the hell is going on here? Sona had asked herself this question countless times, clearly no fewer than that is, Diodora-kun. She was completely lost in her own guesses and conclusions. She saw not the slightest logic or sense in what was happening, because what kind of idiot do you have to be to lure them into a so-called trap where one of the four great Satans is personally present? Trying her best to calm down, she adjusted her glasses with a habitual gesture and shifted her gaze to the stage where her sister was currently performing. Well, be that as it may, in view of these unexpected circumstances, Sona hid her aura with all her might and hid behind the crowd. God forbid she accidentally meet her sister's eyes. Oh. She sighed tiredly to herself. She was definitely out of her element, for who prays to their own sister in hopes of avoiding meeting her? Well, anyway, she wasn't worried about that at all. Sona simply wanted to do her job on her own without relying on her sister's power. And, of course, not to interfere with her work. Exactly. And no, it's not at all because she didn't want to meet her. Got it? Well, in any case, her sister didn't seem to care about her right now, Sona thought, watching her having fun on the stage. By the way, there was another curious fact that surprised her quite a bit, namely, the second main character of the show. Who would have thought it would be Hyoru Tatiana? On the other hand, she recalled who she worked for, and who would have thought that Hyoru-san would work directly with her sister. Sona could only sympathize with her, the poor, innocent little girl who fell victim to her sister. Knowing her sister's character better than anyone, she understood perfectly well that once she fell into her clutches, she wasn't going anywhere. Well, be that as it may, it was time to get back to work. Sona forced her thoughts back into a business channel. So, when they arrived at the scene, strange things began immediately. The response of the holy aura came from several directions at once throughout the pavilion. Obviously, this was another trick, but it was necessary to check them all. Therefore, Diodora's attendant immediately sent out his men. Just recently, another report came from Marcus that another dummy had been found. Apparently, the other side should make its move soon, and Sona was waiting for it. However, she wasn't too worried because even if everything went according to the worst-case scenario, her sister would definitely intervene. Then, whoever the enemy was, they were finished. As for why such a coincidence regarding her sister occurred, Sona had a vague, stupid, even funny and too good to be true guess. Maybe the other side didn't know that the magical girl performing on the stage was a demon lord. This was indeed a presumptuous guess, but it was the only explanation that came to Sona's mind. After all, what kind of idiot do you have to be to lure them into a so-called trap? Continuing to muse, Sona put a hand to her chin. "How many are left, Marcus?" The voice was heard nearby again. Sona shifted her gaze and noticed that Diodora's attendant had already returned. 3 points left, young master. My men will finish soon. Also, our colleagues from the church were spotted nearby. But the last one..." He spoke in a thoughtful voice and looked at the stage. "On the stage, right?" Diodora also squinted his eyes at it. "Damn it! What the hell is going on here? Are we dealing with complete idiots? What kind of moron do you have to be to lure them into a so-called trap where one of the 4 great Satans is personally present?" He cursed again. "I would like to know that too, young master." He continued to drill the stage with his gaze with a strange gleam in his eyes. "I don't like this." Listening to their conversation, Sona continued to draw her own conclusions. Because if they didn't know, then it meant they didn't belong to any of the 3 great powers. Because everyone knows her sister. After all, she's responsible for foreign policy, so she's a well-known figure. Sona shook her head again, driving away this all-too-tempting option. The thought was interesting, of course, but it was too early to draw such conclusions. In any case, with my sister here, whatever they're planning, it's useless. Simply because it is... But before she could finish that thought, a terrible chill suddenly ran through her body. It felt like thousands of tiny needles were piercing her skin. She was perfectly familiar with the sensation, just like... She raised her head in a hurry and saw the muzzle of a huge, large-caliber black rifle pressed against her sister's forehead. And only the last thought rushed through her consciousness like a light breeze. Whatever they're planning, with her sister here, it's useless, because it's pure boom! A deafening roar covered the entire stadium. Suicide! A stream of the most powerful holy energy atomized her sister's body into some liquid substance with ice shards and rushed straight toward them. Death! 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 All sounds vanished. The sky was painted in gray tones. People disappeared. Only the approaching golden deadly light was reflected in her dilated pupils. Her body seemed atrophied, unable to move even a muscle. All thoughts in her head evaporated. The stream of golden light, arising from nowhere, washed away all rationality like a tsunami, leaving only numbness and a sense of imminent demise. Only at the edge of her consciousness did a sharp male voice reach her. "Young master!" Bam! It was as if a star exploded before her eyes. Bright light flooded the entire area. Nothing could be seen except the golden radiance. And only a few moments later did several figures appear in her field of vision. Tsubaki, her queen, had activated her sacred gear and shielded her. A huge mirror, the height of a human, hovered in front of her. However, despite her determination, beads of sweat rolled down her forehead and her eyes were wide with horror. And Sona, with shards of rationality, understood why. Because even with her abilities, she wouldn't be able to block this attack. This stream of holy power far exceeded the current capabilities of her servant. But, thanks to this picture, Sona realized that she could still feel her body, although this light, according to her predictions, made by her consciousness in the background, should have long since atomized her just like. Another figure appeared at the edge of her field of vision. Diodora, just like her, stood in a stupor, eyes bulging the size of satellite dishes, also unable to move a finger. And finally, the last figure, who was closest to the source of the deadly light, Marcus, accompanying Diodora, the knight of the head of the house of Astaroth, stood before them, sword raised high. Colors gradually returned to her field of vision, and Sona was finally able to snap out of her stupor. However, at that very moment, her legs, as if deprived of the last remnants of strength, weakened, and she collapsed to the ground. Only a blank gaze encompassed the surroundings, while her brain, despite her condition, habitually gathered data for her in the background. The emerald light of the barrier gradually faded and disappeared. A huge trench, several meters deep, leading from the stage to them, rushed into view. Steam rose from it. It seemed the very air had boiled the moment this monstrous stream of energy passed through it. The surrounding area adjacent to them, within a radius of a couple of 100 meters, ceased to exist. The layer of earth itself had sunk several tens of meters deep from the residual energy. Only the patch of ground on which they stood remained untouched. Although no, her gaze fixed on a similar anomaly nearby. About 100 meters away from them, another such patch was visible. A huge blue sphere of ice, 10 meters high, enveloped that place. However, the ground around this sphere was not heavily damaged, unlike theirs. It seemed that the energy stream only grazed the sphere. Or perhaps the barrier that deflected the light energy in that direction was to blame. Marcus let out a sigh of relief. When he turned to face them, beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead, and his face was twisted in a grimace of terror. The sword in his hand trembled slightly. However, he took a deep breath, and his gaze filled with determination again. "Young master, how are you? Are you all right?" "Huh?" Barely recovering from the shock, Diodora turned his head toward him. "Marcus, what was that just now?" "That? Your father entrusted me with a strong defensive artifact received personally from Ajka Beelzebub-sama, just in case. It can only be used once. Who would have thought that I would have no choice but to activate it immediately? But thanks to that..." Another nervous sigh came from him. Diodora stared at him with those same empty eyes. However, that was unexpected. His gaze became incredibly serious and he turned toward the stage. "Who the hell is she? Such power!" "Leviathan-sama." Meanwhile, a light smile shone on the face of the magical girl. This smile could truly sanctify temples and cathedrals without any prayers or rites, bestowing happiness upon the people around her. This smile had caused raptures of joy on the faces of many people more than once or twice. The whole school, the whole district, even the whole city admired this dazzling smile of the holy maiden. It seemed her soul was so crystal clear that simply being near her had the ability to absolve all human sins. She was always the first to extend a helping hand for the good of others. And these qualities always evoked deep respect for this person. And Sona's soul, A little girl with blonde hair braided in pigtails stood in the middle of the stage. A white, elegant dress exposing the shoulders on a fragile body. An innocent gaze capable of turning a sinner into a saint. The dazzling smile of the morning sun. All of this made the souls of people around her tremble, just like Sona's soul. However, now the trembling was replaced by golden shining wings behind her back, coupled with the monstrous holy aura emanating from her, were blinding. The air, still not cold from the burst of holy energy, rose into the sky as steam. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. A huge, black, large-caliber rifle, which was larger in size than the girl herself, rested in her hand. Light smoke emanated from the barrel, and that barrel was pointed in their direction. The charge of holy energy, which nearly atomized them, had come from this rifle, and the trigger was pulled by that very small, refined and fragile finger. Horror, chilling to the bone. It seemed to Sona that she was looking into the eyes of the devil himself, the true devil from the scriptures of the churchgoers. Thoughts raced like madmen. Her body was still in a stupor, but shivers reflexively ran through her body. She simply looked with a blank stare into the face of the first saint in Kuo Town, into the face of that very saint who just, her sister, herself, all of them. Hayon Tatiana. Who would have thought that the possessor of such strong, holy energy is a little girl? His gaze became even more serious. And her methods? It's her! Diadora's voice was heard again. It's her! It was her, Marcus. Kill her. Drag her here. I want to tear her into 1,000 pieces. A hysterical voice with notes of madness spread through the area. Marcus turned a serious look at him and said, Young master, we should not act rashly. We have just fallen into a high-class barrier. Retreat paths are cut off. One cannot simply get out of it. Besides, a magic formation shone in his hands but immediately shattered with a crack. There is no connection with the outside world either. I think the best solution would be to unite with our colleagues from the church. The church? Ha ha ha! Diadora laughed with insane laughter. What church? What colleagues? Are you blind? Don't you see the wings behind her back? Don't you feel this holy aura? Open your eyes! Then he pointed his hand toward the ice barrier. And that shot was fired exactly at us. It barely grazed them. Or rather, it wouldn't have grazed them at all if the barrier hadn't deflected the light charge. This is an obvious trap by the churchgoers, and everything before this was just a show. We were lured into a completely isolated high-class barrier and attacked with the strongest release of holy power. If we are finished off here, no traces will remain, even Leviathan Sama. And you still doubt? That is, Marcus's voice faded, and he shifted his gaze to the blue sphere. Cracks ran along the sphere, and it flew apart into shining shards of ice. Several white figures with faces hidden by hoods appeared. In the light, one of them raised his head, his face twisted into a sneer. Still alive after all. A sarcastic voice reached them. Siegfried. Several figures appeared behind Sona. Their aura shimmered with demonic energy. Marcus Sama, are you all right? A new voice came. As soon as we detected the release of the most powerful holy power, we rushed here immediately. Your orders? Sona turned around and saw a dozen new demons appear. Marcus, what are you standing there for? Forward, let's tear them apart. If they want war so badly, they'll get it. Diadora immediately sprang to his feet and began circulating demonic energy in his hands, looking with hatred at the fragile figure of the girl. He rushed toward her. Everyone, hold back the churchgoers. Marcus gave the order and rushed after Diadora. Young master! Sona, watching Diadora's actions, finally began to come to her senses and with Tubaki's help rose to her feet. What is happening here? No, that doesn't matter right now. The main thing is Sister! She stared at Hyoru Tatiana, from whose hands the rifle had already disappeared. She was slowly rising into the air. The shining wings behind her gave off pure golden light into the space, with a holy aura that chilled to the bone. At that moment, a feeling hitherto unseen by her began to be born in Sona. Paralyzing fear abruptly changed to incinerating anger. Mistress, what should we do? Tubaki herself understood nothing and didn't know how to act. I will catch her personally. Sister, Hyoru-san, let's help Diodora. She subconsciously understood that even such a release of holy power could not significantly harm her sister. However, this was the first time such a feeling was born in Sona. Paying attention to nothing else, she jerked forward but didn't have time to run even a couple of meters before bang, 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 boom, 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 rat-a-rat-tat. Sona was abruptly thrown to the side and she fell to the ground. A protective water barrier took the hit and dampened the blast wave. However, upon coming to her senses, from two sides, left and right, portals suddenly opened and two BMPs drove out, on which sat men in black. Immediately, a roar shaking the earth rang out again. Bang, 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 boom, 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 rat-a-rat-tat. The rumble of explosions, the crackle of automatic and machine gun bursts were deafening. Sona could only watch as true hell unfolded before her eyes. Sona was seeing such a picture for the first time. However, the only thing that worried her right now was Hyoru-san,